Good morning. I'm going to call the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners meeting to order for March 12th, 2019, and we will start with a salute to the flag. Mr. Dave Snellgrove, would you lead us this morning, sir?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Von Hartung, Chair.
Present.
Bob Lucy, Vice Chair.
Here.
Marcia Birkbigler.
Here.
Kitty Jung is absent. Jeannie Herman.
Here.
County Manager John Slaughter.
Present.
Assistant District Attorney Paul Liparelli.
Here.
I'm Nancy Parent, County Clerk. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager, item number 3.
Item 3 is public comment. Comment heard under this item is limited to 3 minutes per person. May pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. Commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments should be made to the commission as a whole.
Madam Clerk.
First up this morning is Mr. Wynn Ross, followed by Mr. Ray Lake.
Welcome, Mr.
Morning.
Ross.
My name is Wynn Ross, and I've been a senior hydrologist with Washoe County for the last 24 years. Back in 1995, the Nevada Supreme Court affirmed that it is the county's right to determine, among other things, the availability of water in a hydrographic basin. That was the SERPA versus County of Washoe ruling. On the heels of the SERPA ruling, I was recruited from the United States Geological Survey to work for the county's Department of Comprehensive Planning. My job was to expand on existing basin resource investigations, work that would contribute to, and I quote, orderly physical growth and development in the county. The basins we studied included Lemon Valley, Cold Springs Valley, Spanish Springs Valley, Warm Springs Valley, Dry Valley, Bedell Flat, Antelope Valley, Wallapai Flat, Santa Medio Desert, High Rock Lake Valley, Duck Lake Valley, and Smoke Creek Desert. The scope of the studies included monitoring precipitation at over 100 stations, conducting geophysical surveys, borehole gravity and seismic, drilling and installation of monitoring wells, sampling and analysis of groundwater, aquifer testing, infiltration studies, surface water flow measurements, think Lemon Valley, estimates of subsurface flow between basins, plant inventories, which could work as a surrogate if you don't have long-term precipitation data, recharge and perennial yield estimates, and ultimately the development of numerical models that could be used to predict the effects of future development scenarios and possible change in climate. These studies cost the county taxpayers many millions of dollars. The unique and often irreplaceable data sets from these studies were landfilled just prior to the merger with Tumwa. In my opinion, the responsibility for this incredible loss falls squarely on David Solaro, who was responsible for personnel and project transitions during the merger. I had many meetings with Solaro during this time where I expressed the need to finish or at least preserve the data from these long-term projects. Solaro never inquired about the scope of the studies nor the financial investment the county had made in them over the last couple of decades. In the end, no support was offered. The studies lost. This was a huge waste of time, tax dollars, and careers. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Ray Lake, followed by Ms. Joyce Riffle.
Welcome, Mr. Lake.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Ray Lake. I am the chairman of the North Valley Citizens Advisory Board, and that's what brings me here this morning. We had a CAB meeting last night, and it was pretty well attended. All of the chairs were full. I think they're in excess of 70 chairs, and people were standing along the walls. One of the items that we heard was not on the agenda, so we couldn't hear it as business. We had to hear it under public comment, and that was Pedro Rodriguez with the Nevada Department of Transportation came to speak to us under public comment regarding improvements to I-395 in the North Valleys. So because of open meeting law, we couldn't engage him in, with questions. We just listened to his presentation, and I allowed subsequent people under public comment to make statements on that. The reason I'm here today is to, again, request a little bit of input into our agendas so that we could have actually had this, had we been notified in a timely manner, we could have had this on the agenda and had a formal presentation that they would have been happy to provide. Further, we heard 2 development projects which were very well attended. That one developer had removed his application, but spoke to us anyway, and we had some lively public comment on that. But the bottom line is we do need a little more input to our agendas, and that's really why I'm here this morning. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lake.
Ms. Joyce Riffle, followed by Ms. Tracy Hall.
Welcome, Ms. Riffle.
Hi, my name is Joyce Riffle. I live out in Silver Knolls. I've lived there since 1981, and I'm just addressing the commission today about the problem with the flooding out there. They did build, they brought in a lot of businesses there at Moya and Red Rock, and they brought in the fill dirt instead of digging it out, and that's caused the flooding. It filled up a ditch right behind our house, and that's where Urban Outfitters is also built. And right now we're having problems with the flooding coming across from the drainage from the north of Silver Knolls, and also the water coming up from the ditch. It's come up on our property and it's causing erosion, and our septic tanks and leach lines are in danger. I've got a couple of pictures here to show, pardon?
I'm sorry. Can we have the overhead, please? I apologize.
That's okay. We've got 3 of our houses that are currently, our backyards are halfway underwater right now. And we've got pumps running around the clock. And we've had, the county's been great for bringing loads of dirt and sandbags, and we've been doing that on our own about the last week or 2. And I just wanted to address it with what we could do and what help we could get if there's any solutions to this problem. Thank you.
Ms. Riffle, before you leave, will you make sure Mr. Solero has your contact information?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
And Ms. Riffle, if you could bring your picture over here to your left, to the clerk's desk.
Okay. And that's the other picture there. That was 2 weeks ago of our road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Tracy Hall, followed by Ms. Denise Ross. Ms. Riffle? I'll need the overhead.
Welcome, Ms. Hall.
Hi, Tracy Hall for the record. I brought some pictures and I apologize for them not being printed out, but this is my current situation. This right here are in the inside of my sandbags that are around my home. These sandbags are over 2 years old. They're not working. We have gone and bought pumps. This is right outside my front door. Okay? This is on the other side of the little bridge that my husband had to put in for us to get inside my house. There's my bridge. This water smells like sewage, and that's, our life is pretty much a poop show right now. And it's because that water is not clean. It is contaminated. This is my house, okay? This is the only dry spot right there out of 10 acres. My car gets stuck because the ground is so saturated. It gets stuck. We have to wear mud boots to get out of my yard. I need help. All of us need help, which brings me to the conversation of my neighbor come knock on my door and said the county approached him about giving him some kind of dike behind his house. Why can't you guys approach me? I haven't been approached. I cannot get in my house. This is worse than it was the first time it flooded out there. This is just the beginning. Just the beginning. This is all the way up to the street, folks. My neighbors across the street are in danger now. We're all losing sleep out there. People ask me, why don't you just pick up and move? Why can you live there with your animals and your grandchild? Why would I walk away from a mortgage-free home and start over? I didn't ask for this problem. We built this house, the county gave us permits to build there. You took my money and now you don't care. You're still taking my money. I pay my property taxes on 10 acres of water that isn't mine. The sandbags are not holding. We went out and bought more pumps to keep on the inside of those sandbags. And we're pumping water out. Those pumps go off every 10 to 20 seconds. That's how much water's leaking through those sandbags. Why is this okay? Enough already, please. Come help us. And don't think the mayor doesn't know my situation. I'm not just saying this is your guys' problem. It's the city's problem too. Come together and think of something to help us out. I'll go away if you want to buy my home. I don't want this problem anymore. I don't. My granddaughter sits out there. We're breathing this water. We're breathing it. I have an autoimmune disease. If I become sicker, it's on you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Ms. Denise Ross, followed by Mr. Danny Cleos. In the overhead again, please.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Denise Ross. I'm hoping that you guys saw the Channel 8 interview. This is something that you really need to be concerned of because it's on your watch. The area on Pompey has leaks. This is one of the leaks. It has grown to 10 leaks in a matter of a week. We have videos of this very area back in January and February when this leak did not exist. We have residents that have been making patrols with videos. Mr. Smith will tell you that that's okay because it doesn't have filings in it. Well, then why is it growing? Why has it grown in 1 week? What is happening is that road is being undermined. When that road collapses, all of that lake, just a second, please, sorry. All of this water right here is going to go rushing down Pompey, and you're going to have a major catastrophic disaster. This is another one of the leaks. I'm sorry I sent some video and it didn't go through. Here's a picture of a stream of water pouring out of the HESCO barriers on Pompey. Here's another leak. Here's a photograph of the leak that has grown since the video that I had taken. Like I said, it was on Channel 8 News, and if any of you try to pat us on the head anymore, I invite you. I will shut up. I will not say another word and I'm not being cruel, I'm not being, Mr. Lucy, if you would take your wife and your child and have them stand on that dike for 2 hours, right where those leaks are. Or you, Mr. Hartong, if you would take your child or your grandchild, and you, if you would take your grandchildren, stand there for 2 hours. I will never say a word about it again. But it is not safe. It's going to be a catastrophic disaster. Mr. Solaro and Mr. Smith are lying to you. You need to go out and see it in person. Now, this is elementary school, Bud Beasley. I'm glad that you guys were satisfied with the tour they gave you. This is the flooding issue that's going on in the school. Do you think that these orange nets are going to keep the kids out of it? honest to God, I'm sorry
Thank you, Ms. Ross.
that you guys are happy with it, but it's going to be a disaster.
Thank you.
Ms. Ross, if you'll bring me the photographs for the record. Next up is Mr. Danny Cleos, followed by John Stagebiel.
Welcome, Mr. Cleves.
Danny Cleus for the record. I gave Nancy a handout for you all about effluent water and how safe it really is. This is the Lemmon Valley Sewer Plant. Are those pumps being regulated? Because actually, they're taking effluent water and pumping it right into our lake. There's the extra ponds that are breached. That water is going right into that school. Do you want your kids around that? That water is around all of our homes. This is an environmental mess. Good thing we live in a bowl because we can get up high and look at all this stuff. This is a disaster. Where else in the world? And you can tell from where we were standing that that sewer plant is still running. You guys say you're spending $70,000 a month on this, for our safety. You got 4 pumps. You got SNC running dirt all week to raise everything up. That looks safe? I got more. I need the overhead, please. You can't see this too well, but that shows the pump taken out of both effluent ponds and pumping it right into the lake. There's another picture of it. Here's another picture of it. And here's a close-up of the breach. Somebody's not doing their job. They need to be fired. I say John Slaughter, county manager, needs to be fired. Assistant county manager Dave Solero needs to be fired. And somebody that lies to the media on a regular basis needs to be fired, Dwayne Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Cleos, and if I could please have the photos. Next up, Mr. John Sagebiel, followed by Mr. Sam Dene.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Dr. John Sagebiel. I'm the Director of Environmental Programs at the University of Nevada, Reno, but I'm here representing Truckee Meadows Earth Day today, and I really just want to take a moment and thank you for your cooperation and collaboration on this event. This event now is planned. We are going for April 28th as a Sunday, and it's going to be at Mayberry Park, which is one of the county parks. And the staff here at Washoe County has been very helpful with us, collaborating along with the city of Reno, the university obviously, and a whole host of other organizations that are going to be really coming together to create an event that I think Washoe County and the entire Truckee Meadows community is going to be quite proud of. So again, all I'm here to do is simply say thank you for your cooperation and for the efforts that you put in at the last meeting to get us going on this. We are going. It's going to happen, and I will make you proud, sir. Thank you.
And I'm sorry I didn't write down the time.
It's going to be, we're running 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and it's April 28th. Yeah,
4/28.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Mr. Sam Dene, followed by Mr. Robert Dunmore.
Mr. Dene, welcome.
Welcome to Sam DNA Dene. Sam DNA Dene, the guard angel for Reno for government. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate. I spent many years flying fighters and bombers, and then I was a pilot for Pan American World Airways, the greatest airline in the world. And they went through the disaster that was even worse than this Lemmon Valley disaster. They were thrown under the bus by our own government after the terrorist attack over Lockerbie. I'm not whining, that's just the Lord's truth. It is a disaster that's been ignored, actually even more than you're ignoring this Lemon Valley disaster. I've been coming to these meetings for 25 years, and I'm trying to think of other debacles that I've seen that can match this Lemon Valley disaster, and only one really comes to mind, and that was the Rwanda Farms. I called it the Rwanda Farms ethnic cleansing, when the airport evacuated dozens and dozens of citizens out of their land where they were perfectly happy 20 years ago, and the land is just vacant, still there, just a blight on the community. Anyway, these people, this is just really a horrible thing. I don't know, and I haven't spoken about it much. I've got a lot of things on my plate because I have to cover problems for 400,000 people in the community to come up here and tell you what's going on. And I have been to every meeting since 1994 virtually, and people say, why do you do this? And I said, I don't even really know. I get epiphanies from God, and she tells me, Sam, just keep the crusade going. And for some reason, I get up in the morning, I sometimes arrive at this podium and don't even know how I got here. At any rate, and people say, what have you done? You claim to be responsible for 92% of the good things about Reno. I am responsible. Edon, Mike Kazmierski owes all of his success to Sam Dene, and he knows it. And the best I ever got with him was like a token thank you at this podium. And I'm not picking on Mike because there's other people that Lance Gilman over there at Trick and Don Roger Norman, they owe everything to Sam, because Sam was instrumental in bringing the Gigafactory to Reno. And I regret that now because it has caused as much damage. The only people making out from are Mike Kazmierski and the guys over there at Trick. And it could go on and on. Burning Man, I saved Burning Man. The Air National Guard, I saved the Air National Guard. And I've never asked for anything. I've never asked for anything other. I asked Mike Kazmierski for a quid pro quo for all I did for him, but I got nothing back from him. And all I really asked for is for the Reno media wacko freaks, the wacko freaks out there, you, Joe Hart, Anjanette Damon, RGJ, tell the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Dene.
Thank you for thanking me, Mr. Hartung.
Mr. Robert Dunmore, followed by Ms. Casey Crispin.
Welcome, Mr. Dunne.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Dunmore for the record. I can attest every time I've spoken at a city council meeting, I've been after Sam, so. I'm here also to just endorse the Truckee Meadows Earth Day event that's happening. It's a positive thing for our community, and we're really happy to keep the tradition going and not have a year without an Earth Day celebration. So on a positive note, there is a lot of hardworking, dedicated, enthusiastic, contributing members of our community working on this together, and agencies that have come together in support of it. And not only is it good for our local growing sustainability and environmental community that's really thriving around our area, but it's good for the whole community, and especially for the kids. So as a local educator and an artist from our area, I think it's a family-friendly event. That's what we need in Reno and in the Truckee Meadows area, for families to have fun and enjoy the whole reason we're here, the river going right through our backyard. And it's on a county site this year out in Mayberry, for those of you who might not know. So that's why we're coming to the county for endorsement and standing behind it. And we're looking forward to a really awesome event. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Casey Crispin, followed by Mr. Hector Venegas.
Welcome, Ms. Crispin.
Thank you. My name's Casey Crispin. I'm coming from Riverside Farmers Market and Prema Farm, and I'm also here to ride on those coattails. And thank you for your support for Truckee Meadows Earth Day happening on a county park at Mayberry. I'm actually more of the details person, so I imagine you'll hear a little bit about the new event happening in such a short time span. It's like T-minus 49 days now. And I wanted to build some confidence because we have a pretty amazing group right now at the table organizing this. very quickly, including some of the organizing, the events, or excuse me, the organizations. Part of our organizing committee include Patagonia, UNR, NV Energy, NV Department of Environmental Protection, City of Reno Arts and Culture, Parks Department and City Council, Lime Bikes, Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful, REI Outdoor School, Wandering Wild, Plan of Nevada, River School Farm, Northern Nevada Coalition, Riverside Farmers Market, myself, Great Basin Co-op, Pesticide Free Reno, and more. So we have literally 40 people sitting at these now weekly meetings to plan this event and pull it together. And we're expecting it to be much smaller than the Earth Day event we've seen previously at Idlewild. This will be a dry event, so that alone will have that effect. We're focusing on it being an educational event rather than so much of a commercial event. Family focused, of course, and our intention really with this is to do this first year because we have the opportunity to come in and fill the void that's been created. But our grand vision is actually to promote the bike path along the river as kind of the vein of all Earth Day events in coming years. Mercury Momentum that put on the event over at Idlewild Park is just taking a year off. They plan to come back next year. And so we didn't want to compete with them even though Idlewild was wide open for this weekend, which is why we pursued Mayberry. And our hope is that in the coming years we can actually be kind of like sister events or having actually a series of satellite Earth Day celebrations at the various parks that line the river and really encouraging it to be a bike-friendly event every year. And so our group has a lot of discussions around how we could potentially do an event on Betsy Connolly, which will be, again, coming to the county for in future years, as well as some of the other Wingfield Park and other open spaces along the river. So just wanted to build a little confidence that we can pull this off in a safe way. I just left the meeting, the city special events permitting meeting, and had conversations with Nick Flory and conversations with the PD and fire department. So we're definitely taking all the measures that we need to in order to manage what could potentially be a large crowd, but one that we expect to be fairly reasonable this year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Hector Venegas.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm not very good at this, but I'll give it a whack. I live on the corner of Lemon Valley where the pumps are at, and the pumps are getting older, the mufflers are getting louder. When the water pumps, it shakes my house. The water's getting higher and higher. They've had to go back and elevate the road for the pump house that's across the street from my house in order for them to maintenance it or whatever they do to it. And I just watching the water getting higher and higher. And if the Husco's walls ever breaks down, it's just gonna be a matter of minutes before it wipes out the whole area of Lemon Valley and all those homes there. And everything that I've worked and had is just gonna be gone. The water, when it did recede from my front yard, I lost 14 trees, mature trees that I've been growing for 15 years. My house settled, it cracked, I mean like this, where birds were coming in and laying their nests. So it cost me $2,500 to have my house re-leveled. Now I gotta fix all the cracks in the house, and then it's gotta be repainted. And then for what? Just so it can crack again and spend, I mean, how many times am I gonna spend $2,500 to get my house re-leveled? Now, changing the whole thing. I watched when I was living there that they put in some pipes in front of my house, and I think it was for the water to be from Honey Lake to be brought into Lemon Valley. I watched those pipes being all the way to McCarran, or all the way to West Virginia, all the way down to McCarran, past Bonanza and all that, going down that hill. And then it kind of stopped. I didn't follow it anymore because I don't go that direction. But there's also a sewer line that's right there on West Virginia that I believe goes to the Truckee River. And if there's some way that we could maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just dreaming this up or something, but maybe we could pump the water from one pipe to another and get rid of the water that way. I mean, somebody were to call me with the sewer planning commission, we could maybe go over there and see where the sewer pipes run and stuff, and maybe come up with something. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Sir?
And Mr. Chairman, for the record, I received an email correspondence this morning from Anne Marie Grant, and I just want to let you know I will put it in the record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anyone else signed in?
I have no one else signed in.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak under public comment that has not already done so? Okay, I will close public comment. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, next item is item 4, which is your Commissioner County Manager's announcements, reports, and updates to include boards and commission updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
Okay. Commissioner Burkbiegler, I have you first on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, a couple of comments. Other meetings that I know that we're trying to talk about other meetings and some of the things that happened that we attend to, other meetings that I've been at since the last board meeting are EDON, the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. I sit on the Health District, and I've been at that meeting, and we talked about a number of issues, including some of the issues related to the re-peak of the flu, which and encouraging everybody to please get your flu shot if you haven't, because Washoe County is experiencing a second peak. They are also on top of the measles issue, which fortunately has not become an epidemic or of epidemic proportions in Washoe County yet, but it is in some of the areas close around us, and so that was a topic there. EDON, of course, we were talking about the growth of the community and where we're going and the number that we've grown. It's interesting, one of the things that was said 4 years ago was by Mr. Kazmierski was that we were going to need to build to another Carson City. In other words, about 50,000 residents would move in, and frankly, myself, along with I think most of the people in this community, laughed at that and said, yeah, right, that's going to happen. Well, it's been 4 years since he made that statement, and we've already grown 52,000 people. So in fact, the growth is here, and it seems to be continuing to move on. This general consensus of the presentations that were made at EDON is that although there may be a little slowing down of the economy nationally, it doesn't appear to be impacting us in our market and with the business growth that we're seeing. I also was at the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and of course we're getting ready to kick off our new year of trying to work on getting Lake Tahoe clean, getting rid of invasive species, and we have several projects that are on board for that. We were successful last year in getting our new plan in place to allow for shore zone work, and so if you're interested, if anybody's interested or participates in playing at Lake Tahoe, the shore zone issue is in place and things are going positively up there. I think that's going to be good. We also are continuing to work on our state line to state line bike path, which the section that's being built is from Incline Village to Sand Harbor, and there'll be some additional parking places. We're making some other changes in the community related to parking so that when you go up there, there'll be a big sign that says the parking lot at Sand Harbor is closed, but here's a parking place, and you can catch the bus, or you can ride your bike or walk along the path when it's completed, and it should be completed this year. We're also working, I also sit on Tahoe Transportation District, which is concerned about transportation around the lake, and so we're working on 2 major projects up there right now, and one of those relates to the new bypass of Tahoe City, which of course is in California. The other relates to the bypass of Highway 50 around both State Line and a portion of South Lake Tahoe. So those are 2 projects that we're working on. Those are the committees. I've done several other committees, but those are the ones obviously, I've also met several times with the Regional Governing Board, Legislative Committee, and Planning Committee, as we talk about the regional plan. So that's also going on. Those are just some things that have been going on. I wanted to make a point, though, to say that Mr. Lou Ross indicated that in his testimony, which as we appreciate everybody coming forward, but he is under the mistaken impression that the studies, the hydrology studies that he worked on were trashed. They were not. They are in DRI's possession, and DRI is continuing to work with those studies. And so although the county is not managing that project, DRI is, and trust me, that's in very good hands. They have a lot of knowledge and know what they're doing on that. So we're fortunate that they still have those studies sitting out there. Additionally, I'm curious, and I would like Mr. Smith to please provide me, or maybe the rest of the commission is interested in whether or not there's actually a breach. I couldn't see in those pictures that Ms. Ross brought to us, or I'm sorry, Mr. Cleus brought to us, whether or not there was an actual breach there, and I'd like to see where the breach is, and if we are in fact running water that's not into the lake, if we're running water into the lake that we wouldn't normally be running into the lake. So if you could let me know that, I would appreciate it. And I will see Ms. Ross's and Mr. Cleus's pictures after we get a chance to break. So I will make a point on that. But I do think that's important to see. And then lastly, I want to just talk about Earth Day. I received a call maybe a month ago on Earth Day, and that there was some problems getting the park together, the Mayberry Park together for it. I put a call into Dave Solero and his team, and Dwayne and his team, and they jumped on it immediately. And I'm so happy that we're able to get the Mayberry Park available to the new Earth Day. And I just want to give a shout out to our staff for doing such a great job on getting that done. And I think Earth Day is going to be great. I have a flat on my bicycle, but I'm going to have my grandson fix it for me so I can ride my bike down to Mayberry Park so I can go to it. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke-Bigler. Next, I have Vice Chair Lucy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple meetings want to bring the board up to date on. Did have an opportunity over the past week to go and take some time to go meet with the new sitting NDOT director, Ms. Christina Swallow. She has taken on this initiative. She is an engineer from Las Vegas, but is now working in Governor Sisolak's cabinet. Very, very good, productive conversations with her. I feel like she is one of those individuals that do recognize the challenges that we have here in Northern Nevada. She's doing everything she can to get up to speed on the challenges we are having and what we need to continue to do. We did have a multitude of conversations as it regards to all of the state roads that impact our community and our region, i.e. Mount Rose Highway, Virginia Highlands, Pyramid, I-395 in the North Valleys, and as that pertains to what those really talk about. So one of the things that she and I had the discussions on is that she would like to do is hold a quarterly stakeholders meeting with all of the bodies here in the North to talk about CIP and how that impacts our region and how NDOT can work more jointly with us. She feels that the conversations have been siloed for quite some time, and is committed to having a more in-depth conversation with us as it pertains to safety. And the big issue that she wants to push forward, as do we here at Washoe County, is that public safety is our number one initiative, and that's really what they've pushed forward continuously at NDOT, and want to continue to make sure that all those improvements, any improvements that they do along any of the state highways, has to do with public safety. As we're talking about transportation, one issue that's come up in South Reno are the crosswalks for the individuals that live in Edmonton and the Galena Hills area. Those crosswalks will be getting installed. I have had confirmation from staff about that. So there will be crosswalks and flashers at Edmonton and Butch Cassidy, and then also a crosswalk across Butch Cassidy from Galena High School over towards the Durrell Catholic Academy. So 3 crosswalks will be getting installed for those residents in that area. Just due to inclement weather, we haven't been able to put those crosswalks in and get that done. But as soon as we get some decent weather here for the crews to get out there, we will get started on that. RSCVA had a few, we had a meeting last month, discussed about issues as it pertains to tourism. Nothing really big on the horizon. Obviously, we're all working towards budget season right now and having those discussions, but one thing that I thought was of interest, obviously, to this board is the discussions that this board has approved the demolition of the exhibit hall and the armory next door at the Livestock Event Center. The exhibit hall will not be torn down prior to rodeo this year just because of timing. So it will be up through rodeo, but it will be torn down after, and that will be all open space for future events. And that was a decision that was made in conjunction with our staff and Reno Rodeo. But it was really Reno Rodeo's decision not to do that because they didn't want to be delayed and not have that space available for the rodeo. So the exhibit hall will be up. We are still waiting on the armory and when that will be brought down, but for future improvements at the Reno Livestock Event Center. And then other than that, I have nothing, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Sorry. Commissioner Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was in Washington, D.C. for the NACO conference last week, I went to the Veterans Administration office and I asked them if they'd send us addresses and of all the people and the ways to get a hold of people that could help our veterans, because it's been unsuccessful in many cases trying to get help. So I hope you all received those. I know I did. Also, I took some classes there on elections and census, which is going to be a big thing in 2020, and getting organized for it's going to be a busy time. I am hoping, well, I also talked to a gentleman from NDOT and put him together with the folks from Lassen County, the people we had here last meeting, and maybe we can really get something done with North 395 if we all work together. 2 other things. I'd like to remind staff that the people in the North Valleys are very, very anxious to hear about their cabs and the revamping of them so that they have more ability to do like we used to do and have a regular cab that can do something besides just development. So the other thing is I certainly do want a report on Quartz Lane, on the progress that you're having, getting all that equipment and other assorted things off the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Okay, for me, Mr. Manager, I would like to just have a brief conversation at some point with you and maybe Trevor Lloyd about the CAB's ability to manage their agendas for certain kinds of things, and maybe it's some of those things can be on a quarterly basis or something of that nature. I'm sort of thinking out loud. Before I forget, I will just say, Mr. Solero, stop signs. Won't ask again. I too was in Washington, D.C. I spent some time with FEMA on the phone, sadly, because they were called out to the Midwest with a number of major things where there were multiple fatalities, but they did take the time. I was able to talk to both our region, Region 9. Some of the members on the call were Casey DeShong, Michael Horney, Julia Grower, Bunny Bishop, Janelle Woodward, Mileka Aki, my own staff, our staff they participated in the conversation. One of the things that we talked about was some PDM grants, some pre-disaster mitigation grants. And I know you're thinking, well, we're already past that, but there may be some grants. One of the things that I specifically talked to them about was, interestingly enough, dikes or barriers all along Pompey and then all on the other side of the lake out front of the school and et cetera. So there may be some grants for that stuff, and I'd like to talk to FEMA more about this. And in fact, FEMA has agreed to come and speak to us. So we're going to organize that in the not too distant future. While we were there, Commissioner Herman and I both got a chance to speak to Congressman Horsford, Congressman Amadei. We spoke to Senator Cortez Masto. We spoke to Senator Rosen. And the major topic was assistance for Northern Nevada in terms of one, some mitigation for the region, some of the issues that we're having in the region. And by the way, I also had a conversation at a meeting in an earlier meeting with the EPA, and there are some grants coming up to assist us in mapping stormwater and water flows throughout the region. We've already started that, but I'd really like to have a more comprehensive map so that we can understand. We know what water is trying to do essentially, but we really need to map it so that we can more collectively work out solutions region-wide. One of the big topics, by the way, that we had with all of the elected officials was issues that we're having at the detention facility and the mental health illness issue that we have there, and the fact that it is our largest mental health facility. And it's not just us. This is pandemic. It's everywhere in the nation. And in fact, that was one of the topics that at NACO that they spoke about was how the detention facilities across the nation are being filled with mental health patients, and how do we deal with that on a different level. So that's one of the things that we're going to try to look at. I'm looking forward to having some deeper conversations when we, staff, I've asked you guys to bring back a matrix. I'm hoping that that'll be very soon. That matrix will look at all of the possible solutions in Lemon Valley. I'd urge you all to watch the RTC meeting on Friday. We're going to make some requests at that meeting and hopefully move some things up on the CIP, and we're going to try to make some changes as quickly as we can here. And that is all I have for now, other than I apologize for the wretched horological nightmare that everyone had to endure on Sunday, which is called daylight savings time. I'll leave it alone, Commissioner Lucy. You're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually learned this weekend, it's not savings, it's saving. Daylight saving time.
Saving time.
And it
doesn't
was,
save anything, sir.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like there's quite a contingent across the United States to get rid of that.
Yes.
A couple other things I did want to add on to the discussion about cabs. My challenge with the cabs is that one thing I would like to also discuss as we're talking about this is that, not only are the agenda challenges, but the regular attendance or regular scheduling of those meetings, if they're canceled, some of those challenges that we're having is that membership is seeming to drop off. So that's one thing I'd like to look at when we're looking at this is that how do we address the membership? Because if it's not regular, people it doesn't work into their calendar. They don't put it in there regularly that they have to be there. And so it's intermittent, and it makes a lot of people very frustrated with that. So it's one thing I want to talk to. One other thing I forgot to add too as well, Mr. Chair, is that Manager Slaughter and I met with Alex Statinsky about the Downtown Reno Partnership, and which is the name of the Business Improvement District that us and along with the city of Reno and business stakeholders throughout the downtown corridor participate in, i.e. University of Nevada, Reno, a number of individuals to address homeless, to address the downtown area economic development. It's more than just ambassadors riding around in blue coats. It's a really multifaceted organization. I would urge all the commissioners to take some time to go sit down, meet with Mr. Statinsky, ask your specific questions. But he was very, very adamant that things are going well. I got to see it in firsthand, the work that they are doing down there, and it is phenomenal. They're working hand in hand with our social services to address some of the issues and getting individuals into permanent placement and deal with the homeless down there. So something I'd like for those to do. And I think that's kind of one of the discussions that Commissioner Burke-Bigler brought up in regards to the discussion at the missing middle. There is some challenges because we don't have a urban housing so much for a lot of individuals, so was pushing people to the suburban areas, which drives prices up, so we don't have a missing middle housing. Legislature, I forgot to bring up legislature update. We are, as your legislative liaison, we've had a number of meetings with legislators down there. Obviously, Ms. Jamie Rodriguez, our representative, has been actively tracking bills, a lot of things that will come up in our update later this morning. But still some challenges going on. They're a little bit off track in pace of where they should be by this time. There's only been about 600 to 700 bills introduced, where this time last session there was about 1,200 bills introduced. So we're about halfway in introductions of where we should be. So there is going to be a lot of work, but we are tracking a lot of bills. Hopefully all of you guys got your bill trackers, and we'll have a more robust conversation about that later. Oh, and then this weekend, I will be meeting with the current acting administrator for the Federal Transit Administration, Administrator Jane Williams. I get an audience with her, with Lee Gibson from RTC. We will be meeting with her this weekend to discuss federal grants and monies for Northern Nevada. So I wanted to put that on everybody's record. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Commissioner Burke-Bigler, I have you up again.
Thank you. Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention about going to EDON's program on the missing middle, which was amazingly well attended. And for those of you who have not seen the program or that they put on or had the opportunity to read it, I believe it's up. I believe you can go. I think it was taped, and I believe you can go on to EDON's website and pull it down. It's fascinating. Interestingly enough, the guy who was the guest speaker, his presentation that he made was that we need to go up, and we need to cluster, and we need to stop building single-family homes as much as we need to build multifamily homes and clustered homes. I thought it was fascinating and very interesting. Something that might work in he's from Europe, and so something that might work in a European community. I'm not sure it would work here, because I think we find that a lot of our citizens don't want their open spaces that sit within the city filled up. But you know, it was an interesting program. If you get the opportunity to pull it down and see it, you should do it. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. The only other thing, Mr. Solero, Mr. Smith, at the conclusion of today's meeting, when we get out, I know we have a closed session. I'd like to meet with both of you. I want to talk to you about some of the issues that were brought up in Lemon Valley, and I want to know sort of where we are. So I'd like to have a short meeting with you and the manager, please. I see no one else. Mr. Manager, do you have anything else? Okay. Mr. Manager, item number 5.
Mr. Chair, item 5 is your consent agenda, and today that is represented through items 5A through 5C.
Okay. Is there anyone wishing to pull anything out of the consent? Okay. Seeing none.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion by Commissioner Burke-Bigler, second by Commissioner Lucy. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Manager. Oh, no. Well, yes. Mr. Manager, that's the end of consent.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, if I may,
Commissioner Lucy.
I'd like to recommend, in the form of a motion this morning, a block vote for some items on our agenda. We have in front of us a few items that I feel could be put into blocks, so I'm going to recommend at this time items 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 be placed in block, and I will make that in the form of a motion, sir.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, I'll read those items. Correct. Then public comment will follow if there's any public comment requested on these items. Item 6 is a recommendation to approve the settlement of a claim of Patrick Irwin, Lisa Dahlman, and Charles J. Safford versus Washoe County et al. For a total sum not to exceed $200,000 for all claims against all defendants. Item 8 is a recommendation to approve utilization of funds from the Emergency 911 Fund to reimburse the City of Reno in the amount of $125,475 for expenses related to implementation of emergency fire dispatch services, reimburse the City of Sparks in the amount of $178,134.30 for expenses related to implementation of body-worn and in-vehicle camera technologies, and to purchase 3 Harris Symphony dispatch consoles in the amount of $139,443.65 for the Washoe County Regional Communications Center, as recommended by the 911 Emergency Response Advisory Committee on January 17th, 2019. Item 9 is recommendation to, 1, approve the use of a design build as the project delivery method for the Huffaker Reservoir Lining Phase 3 project as identified in NRS 338.17112, and 2, to approve an agreement for professional consulting services between Washoe County and ACOM Technical Services Incorporated to act as the agent for the county for the development and implementation of the design build process for the Huffaker Reservoir Lining Phase 3 project, which in the amount of $250,095. Item 10 is a recommendation to award a bid and approve the agreement to the lowest responsible bidder for the Southwest Vistas Lift Station Abandonment and Sewer Extension Project. Staff recommends cutting edge construction in the amount of $202,726, and if awarded, approve the license and indemnification agreement for sewer pipeline construction and maintenance between Washoe County and the Steamboat Canal and Irrigation Company to allow construction of the pipeline extension within the Steamboat Ditch, owned and operated by the Steamboat Canal and Irrigation Company at no cost. Item 11 is a recommendation to accept incentive funds from the State of Nevada Support Enforcement Program in the amount of $397,099.84 earned from the federal fiscal year 2016, and authorize comptroller to make the appropriate fiscal year 2019 budget amendment. Item 12 is a recommendation to approve the settlement of Dudley versus Steamboat Canal and Irrigation Company and Washoe County, a case concerning allegations of water escaping from the Steamboat Ditch in 2016-2017 and causing damage to the residential property at 35 Frankovich Court. This settlement follows a mediation that occurred between the parties in October 2018 after nearly 2 years of litigation and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal and expert fees expended by the parties. If approved, the settlement would require both the county and Steamboat to each pay $50,000 to the Dudleys and would result in the dismissal of Steamboat and the county from the litigation with prejudice, parties bearing their own costs and attorney's fees. It also requires Steamboat to make certain improvements in the ditch near the Dudleys' property. The settlement would not be an admission of fault or wrongdoing by any of the parties, but would instead be a compromise to bring an end to the case. If approved, authorize the chair to sign the proposed settlement agreement. Item 13 is a recommendation to approve a pass-through grant from the State of Nevada Department of Public Safety, Office of Criminal Justice Assistance 2019 Paul Coverdale Forensic Science Improvement Project in the amount of $177,189 with an $11,285 county match requirement to provide for continued education for staff and members and training for new criminalists in the Forensic Science Division and purchase of TrueNarc TM devices for the screening of drugs for the retroactive grant period of January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. And if approved, direct comptroller's office to make necessary budget amendments. In addition, if approved, authorize the purchasing and contracts manager to execute all relevant purchasing documents of the 6 additional TrueNarc screen instruments that will cost not to exceed a total of $145,000. And item 14 is a recommendation to authorize purchase of 6 Axon Fleet 2 in-car video cameras, related supplies, installation through the established joinder contract with the state of Nevada. 3273, contract for services of independent contractor awarded to Axon Enterprise, formerly known as Taser International. Estimated expenditures are $678,190.30, not to exceed $800,000 per the existing contract pricing, effective upon board approval through April 1, 2023. If approved, authorize the purchasing contracts manager to execute all relevant contract documents and agreements. I believe that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on those items?
No, Mr. Chair, I didn't see anyone signed in. I do have correspondence from Anne Marie Grant again on items number 6 and 8, which I will put on into the record of today's meeting.
Okay, thank you. I will close public comment. Mr. Luparelli.
Not sure if your packet included the settlement agreement for item 6. I distributed the 3 or 4 page agreement by hand just now, and want to let you know that the clerk has a copy of it for the record. It wasn't in the online version of your agenda. I don't know if it made it into your paper packets, but if you have any questions about the settlement agreement that I just handed out, we're happy to entertain them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Luparelli from the board? Any discussion on any of the items before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? Actually, let me go backwards. We have the motion by Commissioner Lucy, second by Commissioner Burke-Bigler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe motion carries unanimously. Please affirm your votes.
Thank you. There you go.
Thank you. Again, motion carries unanimously. Mr. Manager, I believe that brings us back to item number 7.
Yes, it does. Item 7, this is a recommendation to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance of Washoe County, Nevada General Obligation Limited Tax Refunding Bonds, Series 2019, specifying the terms and conditions of such bonds in their form, providing for the levy and collection of an ad valorem tax for the repayment of the bonds, providing for adoption as if an emergency exists, and providing other details in connection therewith. Assistant County Manager Christine Valetich is here to give us an overview of this item.
Ms. Valetich, welcome.
Thank you. Christine Valetich, Assistant County Manager of Finance and Administration.
And Mr. Chair, would you like a reading, a bill number and an ordinance number on this, sir?
Don't we need to have Commissioner Burke-Bigler present?
We do when we take the vote.
Okay, okay. All right. Yes, please. I apologize. Thank you for keeping me on track, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. For agenda item number 7, the bill number would be 1819, and if adopted, it will bear ordinance number 1631. It is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of Washoe County, Nevada General Obligation Limited Tax Refunding Bonds, Series 2019, specifying the terms and conditions of such bonds in their form, providing for the levy and collection of an annual ad valorem tax for the payment of the bonds, providing for adoption as if an emergency exists, and providing other details in connection therewith.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. Valetich, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Periodically, staff does work with our financial advisor and bond counsel, who we do have here also today, to review our outstanding debt to find any opportunities for refunding or refinancing that debt. And this is what we have here for you today. We have an opportunity to save over $347,000 by refunding our 2011A bonds.
Ms. Valetich, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Absolutely. Christine Valetich, Assistant County Manager, Finance and Administration.
Thank you. So, proceed. I apologize.
Okay, no worries. So just a little bit of background on these bonds. Back in November of 2000, the Washoe County voters approved a bond question, WC1, to issue bonds for library, parks, and open space. And then in 2001, the Board of County Commissioners approved the issuance of $22,785,000 in library, parks, and open space bonds. So those were the original Series 2001 bonds.
At what interest rate?
I don't have that with me. The bonds were since then refinanced
Okay, I'm
in
sorry.
2011. So
Okay.
hence the 2011A bonds,
And
which
tho-
have an interest rate of 4.2%
That's
right
the,
now.
that's the important part, 4.2% interest.
And so in looking at this bond issuance and the interest rate environment that we have right now, we do have an opportunity to refinance the bonds. We would recommend to do it as a private placement with the bank, so rather than a public offering. And so we've solicited bids. We received 7 bids from various banks, and the best interest rate is the bid from Nevada State Bank Zion. So our current 4.2 interest rate would go down to 2.6.
Wow.
And that would save us $347,579, so almost 4% of the amount of the bonds outstanding. I do have to make a correction. The staff report says that the refunding amount is $8,343,000. That is incorrect. Just to update, it's $8,359,000.
Mr. Ripparelli, is that substantive enough? A change in the amount that's being refunded in the staff report? Is it, I mean, are
Mr.
we still, are
Chairman,
we okay to move forward is
You're
my
okay
question?
to move forward. The
That's-
title
Thank you.
of the item gives notice that it's a refunding, and the title, the published title, doesn't contain specific dollar figures, and the difference is minimal.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Perfectly good question there. And so also, there would be no extension of the term on the bonds, so they mature in 2026, so that will still be the end date for these bonds, and then also no change in the tax rate. This is, again, we're voter approved, so it's the existing paid from property taxes.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Okay. I don't see anyone signed in. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, I see
Mr. Chair,
none.
if I may.
Commissioner Lucy.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we move to adopt the ordinance authorizing the issuance of the Washoe County, Nevada General Obligation Limited Tax Refunding Bonds, Series 2019, specifying the terms and conditions such as the bonds and their form, provided for the levy and collection of an annual ad valorem tax for the payment of the bonds, providing for adoption as if emergency exists, and providing other details in connection therewith.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Lucy, second by Commissioner Burke-Bigler. Madam Clerk, I don't have anyone wishing to speak on this item. Is there any public comment?
There is no one signed in, sir.
Okay, is there anyone in the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, any discussion from the board? Motion by Lucy, second by Burke-Bigler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe motion carries unanimously. I didn't hear any oppositions. Carries 4-0 with Commissioner Jung being absent. Thank you, Ms. Valetich. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, our next item is item 15. This is an introduction to first reading of an ordinance amending the Washoe County Code, Chapter 110, within Article 306.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Sorry, Mr. Chair,
That's
let me
all right.
catch up with you.
It's okay.
We are reading the introduction for agenda item number 15, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
This will bear ordinance, or bill number 1820, an ordinance amending the Washoe County Code, Chapter 110, Development Code within Article 306, Accessory Uses and Structures, Detached Accessory Structures, 110.306.10, parens A, lot coverage to add a requirement regulating lot coverage limitations for accessory structures by specifying that on legal non-conforming lots, when the lot size does not meet the minimum lot size for the actual regulatory zone applicable to the lot, the allowed lot coverage under this section will be based on the regulatory zone thresholds set forth in this subsection for the next densest regulatory zone, for which the actual lot size does meet the minimum lot size requirements, and other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto.
Okay. Ms. Olander. I believe you're up. Do you want to give us a brief overview of what we're about to embark on here?
Good afternoon, Julie Olander with Planning and Building. So this is an amendment to the Development Code to address lots that don't meet the size that the code requires them to be. So we're trying to also address two interpretations that we have in the code currently that help staff to interpret how to deal with these lots. Currently, we have nothing that speaks to that, so we're proposing to add a section of code, and as it shows on the screen, that we're going to now address legal non-conforming lots as if they were the size that they are. So if you have a lot that's a third acre or half an acre and it's zoned medium density suburban, which would typically be a third acre lot, that property would be viewed as a half an acre, or as a third acre or half an acre.
But we typically wouldn't see that, would we? We would more typically see lots that are smaller zoned, say LDS. I know that this is an issue that we've had in Spanish Springs because they clustered.
Correct.
This is the non-typical example, if I'm.
Yes, so
memory
here's
serves
an
me.
example of a lot that's zoned high-density rural. Typically that, that lot would be seen a certain way, and what you said, Chair, is correct, that we see this in the common open space areas
Yes.
where properties have been developed under the common open space development process, and they maintain their zoning. So we'll have lots that have a higher, would typically be a larger lot, but they've been, the lot size has been reduced because of the lot, common open space lot development requirement. So that's where we see that. And it has been a problem in Spanish Springs. It's also a problem up in Arrow Creek. We've had some
Yes.
lots up there. So what this prevents people to do is develop their lots as they've been built. So what we've seen is when they come in with accessory units or accessory dwelling units or accessory buildings, that they can't add those because they've already met the density that's allowed on the property.
Okay, so answer a question for me, and then I don't have any other commissioners wishing to speak, but I know we have some other things to get through. How will this affect people that have already utilized this, I'm going to call it a loophole in the code, because I know that there are some in Spanish Springs. Are we going to require them, because I know that this question is going to come out, are we going to require them to remove those accessory dwellings?
So in most situations, it's going to be to their benefit. How this came up was we found a lot that was had an accessory structure on the site.
Right.
And they shouldn't have been allowed to have that.
Exactly.
And so in this situation, that will be allowed. And so we're not going to go back over.
So it'll be
previous
grandfathered.
ones.
We have a grandfather.
We're not going to go back.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that's put on the record, because people will come up and demand, well, you guys changed the code, now he needs to take that down. So that does need to be put on the record. Okay. Commissioners.
Mr. Chair, if there's no other further comment at this
Well,
time.
let me find out if there's any, hold on just a second here. Madam Clerk, do you have anyone signed in for public comment?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak on item number 15 that has not yet signed in? Okay, seeing none, I will close that. Commissioner Lucy, you are up, sir.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we introduce and conduct a first reading of an ordinance amending Washoe County Code, Chapter 110, Development Code, within Article 306, Accessory Uses and Structures, Detached Accessory Structures, 110.306.10A, Lot Coverage, to add requirement regulating lot coverage limitations for accessory structures by specifying on legal non-conforming lots when the lot size does not meet the minimum lot size for the actual regulatory zone applicable to the lot. The allowed lot coverage under this section will be based upon the regulatory zone threshold set forth in subsection 4, the next densest regulatory zone for which the actual lot size does meet the minimum lot size requirements, and other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto. Also introduce Bill 1820 and set a public hearing for the second reading and possible adoption of the ordinance for March 26, 2019.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, our next item is item 16. This is a public hearing. This is regulatory zone amendment case number WRZA 18-0009, the club at Arrow Creek. This is to adopt an amendment to the Southwest Truckee Meadows regulatory zone map, changing the regulatory zone from high-density rural, one dwelling unit per 2 acres on plus or minus 140.12 acres, and low-density suburban, one dwelling unit per 1 acre on plus or minus 8.94 acres, to parks and recreation on plus or minus 149.06 acres. And if adopted, authorize the chair to sign the resolution to that effect. Generally, the PR zone is intended for parks, golf courses, ski resorts, and other active and passive recreational uses for either public or private facilities.
Okay. I will open the public hearing for item number 16. Ms. Olander, you're up again.
Julie Olander with Planning and Building. This is a zone change for the area around Arrow Creek Clubhouse, or the golf course. As stated, it currently is zoned high-density rural and low-density rural on the site, and we're proposing to change it to parks and recreation on the whole site. This is a location of the site. And as many of you know, it's a private club. It's an 18-hole golf course and has associated buildings with it. They're proposing to do some further expansion on the site, which made us aware that changing the zoning to PR, Parks and Recreation, would best suit them. As you see on this slide, you can see that it is zoned HDR, a portion of it LDS. It's just sort of a straight line down through that whole area out there, which doesn't really function well for the golf course. We're proposing to change the golf course, just where the clubhouse is located, not where the whole golf course is located, but the main area, to PR, to Parks and Rec. This would facilitate many of the expansions that the clubhouse is proposing to do, which will help them be more viable and more successful in the area. And notices were sent, it went to the CAB. The CAB was in favor of it, and here is a location of who was noticed. And staff was able to make all the findings, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay.
And the applicant is here also.
Before we move on, are there any questions from any of the commission members? I have no one wishing to speak. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Okay. Mr. Snellgrove, did you need to make any comments? Give you an opportunity?
I wanted to be relatively brief, considering that it's me talking. Brief is all relative.
Welcome.
I do want to thank staff for this. We started on this project. We got a special use permit approved for improvements in the backyard ground area. That's going to be improving the golf practice facilities and also adding a pool. That was all allowed within the residential zoning district, as Ms. Olander covered. When we turned in the second special use permit, which was the clubhouse expansion, some of the uses that we had in there, staff had to give us the bad news, and I've got to compliment and commend Mr. Lloyd and his staff in terms of taking some really, really bad news and actually finding a solution and a path for us. It's definitely taking longer, but my hat's off to them. It's not an easy situation to be in, but they did a great job in working with us and getting us on a path that we could come through. We're in agreement with staff and the recommendations relative to this zone change. You may have a number of cards up there. I believe most of them are just in favor and not wishing to speak. Because out in the left center field area, most of the people here are with Arrow Creek, and they're in favor of the project. I know Mr. Pistello would like to make just a couple comments, but that I'll close my comments and be available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pistello, I beg your pardon. Identify yourself.
Hi, Good day, and thank you for serving. I also want to thank those in the audience that
Mr. Costello,
keep coming. Oh, I'm sorry.
please identify yourself. for the
My name is Gary Costello. I'm a resident of Arrow Creek.
Thank you.
And involved in the project for the expansion of the club. Okay. Again, thank you for serving, and thank all of those that came down in support of us. They've been consistent in that. And also want to thank the county and the planning staff, Mr. Lloyd and Ms. Olander, for the cooperation that they've given us in moving forward. As you know, this will bring us into compliance with county code. We have not been under the zoning that was there, and so that is why this will rectify that. And we appreciate your unanimous approval that would go along with the two previous groups. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I have no one in the public well, actually, let me ask this. Do you have any questions from the board? No. Okay. I have no one in the public signed in wishing to speak. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? This is item number 16. Okay, I will close public comment. Before I'll entertain a motion here, but I would like to just commend staff for finding a path forward. Well done. This is the direction that we've given you guys, to try to find a path forward, and it's not to manipulate code or to make horrendous changes that have unintended consequences. I think that you guys have done a great job, and I'm very pleased. Commissioners.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lucy.
Mr. Chair, I also would like to share that same sentiment. I want to thank staff, but I also want to thank the individuals, the applicant themselves in Arrow Creek. This is obviously this sits right in the heart of District 2, and full disclosure, which I am a member of this golf club and enjoy recreating there. But I think this shows the true testament of an applicant to come forward and fix an issue that sometimes gets missed, and I think that a lot of people go along and never come back and right the wrongs. So be it as it pertains to conformance within our code, and I think this is a true testament of those individuals and the hard work and time that they've put into investing into this. It would be in my honor and my pleasure to make the motion that we move to adopt the amendment to the Southwest Truckee Regulatory Zone at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Lucy, second by Commissioner Burke-Bigler. Comments under discussion. Commissioner Burke-Bigler.
Thank you. I should also mention that although I'm not a member now, I have been in the past for many, many years and was one of the original early on. My husband was one of the original early on members of the golf course, and so it is a beautiful place, and I think this is going to be a fabulous addition to it. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from commission members? Seeing none, we have a motion by Commissioner Lucy, second by Commissioner Burke-Bigler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, I believe. Please affirm your votes on the screen. All those, motion carried unanimously with Commissioner Jung being absent. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, the next item scheduled is item 17. This is the possible closed session. We do need to hold this today, so what I would suggest is that we continue the rest of the business on the agenda, and then the commission would recess and go into that closed session. So if that's okay, then we would go next to item 18. And
Please.
that is discussion, direction to staff regarding legislation or legislative issues proposed by legislators, by Washington County Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District, or by other entities permitted by the Nevada State Legislature to submit bill draft requests, or such legislative issues as may be deemed by the chair or the board to be of critical significance to Washoe County. Jamie Rodriguez, who is our government affairs manager, is attending hearings at the moment. She's been texting with me regarding those, so she can't be here today for this. You should have, and please let me know if you don't, you should have the most current legislative week 5 bills of interest list. And I have several on here that I wanted to point out. Jamie Rodriguez wanted us to point out with the recommendation that's assigned to those as far as a possible position. The first is AB 70. I believe that's on the second page of this document. This is the Attorney General's open meeting law bill, and I believe Paul Liparelli has been a part of that task force with the Attorney General's office, and through a lot of discussion, some changes that have been proposed, amendments been proposed. Our recommendation is that we support that bill, AB 70.
Okay, I'm confused. It says, as written, we would need to oppose the bill, but are hoping to work with the new AG, and then over here I see support.
So my understanding is that there are now several amendments from across the state that have been
Yes.
proposed from
Okay.
various interests. And my understanding is now that the bill is in a position, I don't have the specifics of what those are. Some of those changes were made they're being proposed. Perhaps Mr. Liparelli can enlighten us a little bit on some of those specifics.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Liparelli.
Mr. Slaughter is right. The DA's office has been invited to be a part of the Attorney General's Open Meeting Law Task Force for many years. I have attended several meetings prior to this legislative session. There was a draft of the bill that came out early. I think it was in a BDR format, that a number of the members of the task force and I had concerns about. The Attorney General's office worked with us throughout those task force meetings, and the task force adopted an amended version of the bill, recommended the adoption of an amended version of the bill. I'm comfortable with those amendments, as are my colleagues from other public entities throughout the state. And that was introduced or heard first in committee, and those changes were made part of the record. So we're comfortable with the changes that have been made, and we're keeping an eye on any others that come along.
Okay, I have a question, just in terms of procedure. Do you want us to give direction as one whole, or would you like on a per bill basis? Because you made mention that
So I have, Mr.
you'd
Chair.
like some direction.
Right, so we
Yes,
have,
Mr. Manager.
I have five bills that have been forwarded to me from Jamie that she would want direction on.
Okay.
So specifically for those five, but then generally if there's another direction, certainly would take that.
Okay, so here's what I'll do. Unless the commission wants to chime in, I'll assume that what is written in the staff report that we will support or not support. We'll support what's the staff's recommendation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we'll just have to do a motion.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay? Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, the next item, next bill for discussion is AB 102. And the specific request for support comes from Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. The specifics of this bill, I believe current statute, when there was a crime against a first responder, there is some enhancements, if you will, on that punishment that would come from that. This bill would extend that enhanced penalty to crimes committed against not just the first responders, but also to their families, their spouses, or children. And so as a request from Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District, they've asked that we support that bill. I believe as written. I don't believe there's been any changes to that one.
Okay. Any comments from the commission? Okay, I have no one wishing. Mr. Manager, continue.
Next specific bill of interest is AB 240. And this is one that I am aware of. This is a bill that would require Washoe County, along with our neighboring counties of Carson, Douglas, Lyon, and Story, to basically cooperate on an annual basis and prepare reports related to issues that we have in common, related to growth, related to transportation, related to a number of issues. Skip Daly is the author of the bill. You may recall last session, he was working to do something to encourage collaboration among the region. We believe this is, in the description he gave to me was, he did not want to create another layer. He did not want to create another commission that then has authority over development, approving, denying development. He just wants the group, those 5 counties, to collaborate on these issues.
Not going to the length of another regional governing board.
Correct.
Yeah. Commissioner Burke-Bigler.
Mr. Manager, I am curious who the people would be that would be assigned to this from each county. Is he talking staff or elected officials, a combination of the
So his, as written, and I don't believe there have been any amendments. There's some discussions, obviously, of some amendments from some various parties, but as written, the Board of County Commissioners would assign that to the county manager in each of those 5 counties. And there's some duties placed upon those county managers to gather input from all the jurisdictions from within their county. So I know certainly that's up for discussion among others who are watching this bill, but that's the current version as I recall.
All right, good,
But
thanks.
this group, if I may, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Burke-Bigler, I don't mean to
No,
jump in.
that's fine.
This group would not have any purview over planning, any direction at all. It would just merely be somewhat more of just a friendly handshake as to what kind of development, a diplomatic effort as to what kind of development is occurring in adjacent counties.
I think that's a good description. A report would be prepared. That report may contain recommendations. Some of those recommendations could be in the form of needed legislation.
I see.
That report is made to the Legislative Commission, which then all legislators would have access to that report.
Okay, Commissioner Burke-Bigler.
Thank you. Is this somewhat similar to what Clark County does with their 5 jurisdictions?
That was his, as he stated to us, that was the model he was trying to recreate without going even that far, but it certainly is the model he was trying to recreate.
Which I think fits perfectly in with Commissioner Hartung. How long have we been on the commission now? 6 years, and I believe at the very first meeting, Commissioner Hartung talked about the greater region and how important the greater region is to whatever type of growth we're going to deal with. And so I would think that this is something that fits right in with Commissioner Hartung's thoughts, and it certainly fits in with mine.
Regional's not really regional.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mr. Manager, proceed.
The next bill, and I'm going to have to work through this one because this is one I'm not quite as familiar with, but this is AB 176. This is the sort of the title is the Sexual Assault Survivor Bill of Rights. And the note that Jamie has placed on this is concern as written, which would mean that we would, if we agree with that she would work with drafters, work with the supporters of this bill to try to work through some of the issues that are identified. The 2 issues that she has identified with the bill, first is that it reduces the timeline for testing of sexual assault kits. Takes it from 120 days, which is what was placed and we agreed to last session, to 90 days beginning in 2021. Certainly there are some resource concerns with that related to the costs of turning those kits around in that time period. The staffing requirements that would mean, space requirements that perhaps at the crime lab that could create. Let's see. The second issue is that it would now, as written, it would require that our crime lab hold and maintain all evidence that's tested. Currently, we test and then send evidence back to the jurisdiction where the crime occurred. So this obviously creates some issues for, again, for space, for tracking. It's necessary for both prosecution, but also for storage and liability of maintaining that evidence. So those would be the two issues we have. I know representative from the Sheriff's Office is here, is probably very familiar with this bill. If you have specific questions related to
See
it.
Corey sitting in the audience.
Any questions?
Before we bring anybody up, Commissioner Burke-Bickle, you had some comments or some questions?
Yeah, I actually just had a question. I would want to make sure that this bill works with ACA. I think it's called ACA. It's our,
Affordable Care Act?
no, I probably have the wrong, I always get the wrong, so I'll just freely admit I haven't.
CAC,
But we have an organization here in town that works in the DA's office that is responsible for taking care of children who are sexually assaulted or physically assaulted. CAC? CAC. I had the right letters, I just had them in the wrong combination. The CAC, I would just want to make sure that this doesn't create problems for our current program. One of the reasons this program, as you guys are probably all aware, was put into place here in Washoe County is so that the victim doesn't have to report, what happened to her or him 6 or 7 times. If you're 4 years old, you're going to lose or gain, or your memory is going to change, and I would want to make sure that type of the program stays in place. So, but I mean, I think these are excellent ideas. I just want to make sure that we're protecting the small children with the program we have in place, which seems to be working quite well.
I believe the answer to that question is yes, and I would expand, actually, the CAC actually does, I believe, does all of our sexual assault
Yes, they do.
testing.
Yes, they also work with adults for sexual assault.
And as I understand it, I don't believe this is going to impact that function, but certainly creates some concerns at our crime lab.
Okay, good, thanks.
Okay. Do we have any
So
questions?
as I mentioned, the recommendation is that we list it as concerned as written. That gives staff some leeway to work with all of the proponents and opponents to that bill.
To get language
To
that's
get
more
language
amenable.
that's more amenable, yes.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Solferino? Okay.
No.
Okay. Mr. Manager, proceed.
Then the last bill that Jamie has flagged for today is SB 245. And this bill she has marked as recommended to oppose. This has to do with, this bill does two things. First, it raises the tort cap from $100,000 to $250,000 on claims. This is obviously of concern. The second is that it removes protection from governments for gross negligence, which would have a cap of $1 million per claim. So certainly, if you have specific questions, I believe Mr. Liparelli can probably assist with that discussion.
Mr. Chair, this bill is more or less brought to the legislature by the plaintiff's lawyers. The idea is that the caps that are in place for municipal liability under torts are too low, don't reflect the modern conditions. So it started out as change the cap to a different number. But the more concerning by far provision of the bill is the one the manager mentioned, the gross negligence feature. That would allow claims of up to $1 million per claimant. So typical car crash example, county employee driving a car hits a car containing 4 people, all 4 are injured. Now, if that case comes forward, there'll be a claim for gross negligence, which means $1 million per claimant. So it could be a $4 million case. And the folks that support these kinds of things say, why should government not compensate tort victims the same as private folks do? And the answer is it's a public policy debate. Do you want to expose your local governments to increasing amounts of liability, which are paid for with taxpayer dollars. So every dollar that the county spends settling or a claim or suffering a judgment is a dollar that the county can't spend on services. The only relief is to raise taxes or other forms of revenue that will create the money necessary to fund these. If a bill like this went through, we would obviously have to seriously re-examine the county's budget and the risk management fund to make sure that it contained enough money that would reflect the types of cases we would expect to see coming in. So it's good news for plaintiffs, bad news for local governments and taxpayers.
Commissioner Burke-Bigler.
Supportive of this if there were two requirements put in them. One was that the money that is paid can't come from taxpayer dollars, and since government doesn't have any money, only taxpayers have money, there would be no way to pay it. And the second would be that the plaintiff's lawyers get none of it. If that could be put in there, it might be worth supporting. Then we would have citizens, certainly if an employee of a government deliberately caused an accident, I would hate to see them be able to hide behind the government. But at the same time, I also would hate to see the plaintiff's attorneys getting wealthy on the back of the taxpayers.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Burke-Bigler has articulated the public policy reason that usually blunts the arguments about increasing tort caps. I know some plaintiffs' lawyers. Some of them are my friends. They're perfectly fine folks, and I think the county's considering engaging some in a couple of weeks to represent the county in opioid litigation. So they provide an important service to citizens and injured people. But the question really is, it's always been, when you're talking about waiving sovereign immunity and allowing people to make claims against the government, is what are you really doing when you allow that? And what you're really doing is opening up the government wallet, which is filled with taxpayer dollars, and allowing claimants to take those dollars out. And that's the debate.
Okay. Anything else from any of the other commissioners? All right, so we have 5 items here.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do you want to do public? check
No,
for
no,
public
that's
comment?
what I'm going to do.
I was
Yep.
going to make a motion, but.
I
let you
want
do
to open public comment first.
I do have one other comment.
Yes,
too,
no,
sir.
go ahead, Mr. Lucy. I'm sorry, I beg your
I was kind of waiting to get to the end of the discussion.
Give me, yep. Go ahead.
Mr. Manager, we do have on our list, which is just new to the watch, which is AB 236. Or no, I'm sorry, SB 236.
SB.
And as it pertains to,
Security of elections.
I'm sorry, AB 236 is the one I'm discussing. AB 236. This is the discussions about criminal law and criminal procedure. I know that was heard in Assembly Judiciary last Friday. This is just currently a watch. Have we taken, I thought we might have been voting on this. Is there a reason why we're not taking a position at this time on this bill?
This, Mr. Chair, through you, this is one of those far-reaching, widely discussed bills. This is generally known as the criminal reform bill. There was a hearing last week, and I would say that the county's interests were well represented through a number of our elected officials and others who spoke related to the concerns related to this bill. Certainly, if the board wants to, this bill has a long way to go. Is part of the reason why we still have it as watch. I think if any direction needed today would be to certainly for my staff to engage in those discussions as this works through all of the iterations that it's going to work through.
And I agree with that. My only contention is that I'd like to give the staff a little bit more direction, is that we do have concern as written because of the fiscal impacts to the county in its current iteration, how this would impact not only the jails or SOs and alternative sentencing and a number of departments in which we currently fund. This would be taking a lot of onus onto the county from the state without a whole lot of financial support to maintain these programs. So I would urge this board that we maybe move this from not just a watch, but move it into more of a concern as written status, and give staff the ability, if needed, to oppose this in any future hearings, that they have the levity to do so.
Okay. Commissioner Burke-Bigler.
So is this the bill that that the district attorneys were aggressively opposing it last week?
That's my understanding, yes. I didn't sit through the hearing. I do know that
I wasn't there, but
were-
I watched it on TV,
Right.
and that there were a number of district attorneys from across the state. who
I
were-
spoke briefly to DA Hicks after the hearing, and I know that this was the bill that he was there testifying against, as well as many other of the DA's association I know was there. I'm not sure if the sheriffs took a position or not.
Mr. Solferino is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe they did. I know, as I said, this bill has a long way to go.
Mr. Solferino, welcome. Please identify yourself.
Chair Hartung, members of the commission, Corey Solferino representing the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. You are correct. AB 236 is a far-reaching criminal justice reform bill. Our interpretation, our legal team, we looked at it. We represented the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, the Clark County District Attorneys Association, and the Washoe County District Attorneys Association, and took a very strong opposition to this. We are working with Chairman Yeager. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow night down in Carson City to go over some of our concerns. It's hard to put a fiscal impact on this when Jamie and I were working on the measure together. Obviously has far-reaching impacts. What they're trying to do is the prison population is expected to rise over the course of the next 10 years exponentially. And they're looking at a cost savings measure of approximately $650 million that they're trying to reinvest in the community. The problem is, as Commissioner Lucy picked up right on the head, from our interpretation, it pushes the prison population onto the locals by declassifying a lot of crimes from felonies to gross misdemeanors and misdemeanors, which then would fall under the jurisdiction of the Washoe County Detention Facility and severely hinder our ability to use alternative sentencing programs and take that prison population down to the locals. So we do have a long way to go on this. I do believe, and the Washoe County Sheriff's Office believes heavily in criminal justice reform. We just believe that this bill isn't there yet. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions that the commissioners or this body has regarding that.
Yeah, Mr. Manager, this is what was brought up to us yesterday during our site visit at the detention facility.
So, Mr. Chair, if I'm...
Yes, Mr. Lucy, go ahead, please.
You know, with the... I mean, obviously, all from the direction of the board, but I would make sure, I would ask the board that we move this from just a watch into a concern as written, and give staff the ability to move to an opposition, if need be, based upon the fiscal impacts to the county, in support of our other elected departments as well.
Even though, Commissioner, the law enforcement has taken a strong opposition stance?
Well, we'd like to support them because it is, and because realistically, the impacts will impact their budgets on a front line, but it also our overall budget.
Yeah.
From our standpoint, because it would be CIP increases to over the next 10 to 20 years for the jail. It would mean more law enforcement agents, not only sheriffs, but also alternative sentencing. Not to even include the DAs and courts, and to address a number of these because of the increased load. So it's tremendous, as Mr. Solferino pointed out, that it would be way overreaching, as the manager Slaughter pointed out, that it's got a long ways to go. However, we'd like to see this not go very much further.
So do we want to just go to straight opposition or strong opposition?
No,
to
I just go
its
concern
support?
is written at this time.
Okay.
And we'll just kind of keep, we don't want to move there and testify in opposition at this time. We just want to make sure we watch it until we actually have to take an advanced step
Okay.
to oppose.
And I know yesterday we had this very conversation with the sheriff's staff, and I'll use a pun, and don't call me out, Commissioner. It's intoxicating to think about decriminalizing some of these drugs and what effect that might have. But I think the farther-reaching issue is what are the unintended consequences? So I'm supportive of the direction that you want to go. I don't know whether
Strategically, it makes a lot more sense for us to have concerns of the bill as written, but not truly take an opposition point at this point, just based upon some of the other initiatives that we're currently working on down in Carson City. So I would just urge that we move this to a concern as written.
Okay, so then that adds 6 bills in, Mr. Manager. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Solferino? Okay, all right. Anything else from the commission? Okay, let me open up. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak? I have no one on public comment.
I see no one signed in on this item, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there anyone wishing to speak under public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close that. Mr. Manager, what would you like us to do? Do you want a direct motion to?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Lucy.
What I would do is I would make a motion that we direct staff to move forward with the staff recommendations outlined within the item of the bill tracker, and take a position on the bills outlined and move item AB 236 to a concerned as written position.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Have a motion by Lucy, second by Burke Bigler. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Please affirm your votes on the screen. I didn't hear any opposition. Motion carries unanimously with, again, Commissioner Jung being absent. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, if I could just briefly on that item, thank you for that direction. Again, points out the kind of the difficulty that we have. The legislature doesn't stop for us. They keep moving forward. It's very fluid. And so this ongoing discussion is very beneficial to staff. There will be items that come up between commission meetings, and that's, the trust you place in staff, both the staff that's in Carson City. We're well represented there, not just my office, but several of the offices, Deputy Solferino being one. And we also have our legislative liaisons that we work through. So just bear with us as we move through this session. We're still going. And as just one last reminder related to legislative items, there is a local government day that's coming up on March 28th, and all of us are invited to attend that date. We'll get information to you as just following the meeting today.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, one other thing I'd like to point out.
Please.
I serve as your legislative liaison for this board, but I also am the chair for the NACO Legislative Committee. I serve on that with Lorinda Wickman as my vice chair from Nye County. We do have a weekly meeting at 3 p.m. I urge all of you to jump on. We do have a lengthy discussion about all of these bills as it pertains to counties, because many of the bills pertain to all, not just urban counties, but rural counties. As a lot of these issues do impact us financially from every standpoint. So I would urge, if you do have any specific questions, please join us on that phone call at 3 o'clock on Fridays. That is every Friday at 3. And I know Amanda Evans sends those invites out, and you can get on those phone calls. But and we do send these bill trackers out to obviously all the commissioners. So if you have any other concerns, I'd love to sit down with you and have any further discussions on that stuff as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? Mr. Manager, item 19.
This is public comment. Comment heard on this item is limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. The commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the commission as a whole.
Okay, Madam Clerk, will you call public comment, please?
First up is Ms. Denise Ross, followed by Mr. Danny Cleos. Okay. Mr. Cleos?
Welcome.
I think there it goes. Danny Cleus for the record. everybody in our area got this letter from Community Service Department, Engineering and Capital Projects about our flooding. In here, consider elevating your house above flood levels. Well, we talked about that here. That didn't go over too well, I guess. Other things in here about insurance. We need flood insurance. That will save us. Well, here's one of the denial letters, and I'll read it for you. We only provide coverage for direct physical loss by flood, which means we do not pay for. Then it goes on to number C. We do not insure for loss of property caused directly by earth movement, even if the earth movement is caused by flood. Some examples of earth movement that we do not cover are destabilization or movement of land that results from accumulation of water in subsurface land. But yet, your staff, again, is recommending all this because it's going to help fix our problems. No, it doesn't fix nothing. It just costs us more money. Another thing on here, the date, March 15th, 2019. I don't know if y'all know, but this is the 12th. And we got this on the 9th. They're a little bit disoriented there, I think. On other matters, with the leak in the sewer plant, none of those ponds are lined. So you have water coming in from both sides, going through that dirt, infiltrating both ways. No matter if you had pumps there or not, it's still going both ways. All the outer detention ponds, been there for how many years? How much sewage has gone through there? And that's still leaking into our lake. Like again, I'm gonna ask this again. We need somebody in here, and this goes to your staff, that will do their job. This also says that we have floods every 10 years. 3 winters, 2 years, direct. Problem. Most of the floods that have happened out there with the lake, not the flash floods, the lake floods, clear up within that year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cleus.
That's all the people I had signed in, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have no one else signed in. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? I will close that item. Seeing none. Mr. Manager, item number 20.
Item 20 is your Commissioner, County Manager's announcements, reports, and updates to include boards and commissions, updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
Mr. Manager, do you have any such items?
Mr. Chair, maybe come back to me.
Okay.
I'm loading here.
Very good. I have no one wishing to speak. I'll jump in here. One of the things, and Commissioner Herman, you actually heard me ask, I believe you heard me ask Congressman Horsford about this, and also Congressman Amodei about having a catastrophic, getting rid of the FEMA flood insurance and just having a catastrophic insurance. So I'm still hopeful that there'll be some traction with that, and that catastrophic insurance would cover people regardless of what the catastrophe is, regardless, whether it's wildfire or whether it's earthquake or whether it's flood or whether it's tornado or hurricane, or the list goes on, and it would be more of a national movement, because I completely understand the issues that are being raised. I also just wanted to mention briefly that the manager and I had an opportunity to tour the detention facility yesterday. It is, I will use the term brimming. It is very full right now, and there's no particular reason. You know, they can usually track it back to some particular event, and in this particular case, they can't. And so there is a concern that we're going to start reaching our maximum numbers very quickly. So I urge all of you to go up if you have not taken a tour recently. The new sheriff has made some substantive changes. He's really addressing quite a number of things, and I'm pleased with what I'm seeing, but we're still mired. That's going to be a tough one for us. So we've got some challenges ahead of us, but I think that with some wise decisions based on the collective groups, I think that we can come up with some solutions to try to divert some of these folks that really don't need to be incarcerated. And so I'm looking forward to that deeper dive and that deeper conversation. Manager Slaughter, you are now up.
Thank you, sir. Earlier, Commissioner Lucy mentioned some legislative phone calls. I just want to make certain that we're all aware that at no time during those calls do we have a quorum of the board on the phone call. So if you are interested in those phone calls, if you want to coordinate through my office, we can make sure that we maintain that. And then I just wanted to publicly recognize, I have recently done a couple of tours and ride-alongs, one with the Regional Public Safety Training Center and Brian DeMonick. Brian has been now with us maybe a year. He has turned that facility around. He's doing wonderful things, and so if you ever get a chance to tour that facility, I would recommend that. And then I wanted to specifically acknowledge, I did a ride-along a few weeks ago with Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Station 45. I spent the afternoon and into the evening with that crew. Captain Jamie Rivera, Engineer Sal Frankie, and firefighter paramedic Casey Marvin. We went on a couple of, and one in particular, one very difficult call. And two things that I learned from that. In this case, these gentlemen, but I know we now have several female firefighters. These gentlemen, the amount of care and concern, not just for the community that they have, but also when we arrived on scene, in particular one call, it was just amazing to watch these firefighters turn from firefighting and paramedics and medical care to really social workers and people who just genuinely care about their community and the individuals that were involved in that call. So I just wanted to specifically thank Captain Rivera, Engineer Frankie, and firefighter paramedic Marvin for the afternoon and evening that I got to spend with them.
And for the record, 45 is the old Station 15, which is the Sun Valley Station, which is the busiest station. I have actually done that ride along. I will only use the term of sobering. It's sobering what they have to do, Mr. Manager, I would encourage both of us. I've been invited. I haven't done it yet to do the same ride along with the SO in that district.
We intersected several times that evening.
I am not surprised.
With the firefighters and the deputies. So,
yes.
It was a busy evening.
Yes. They all do great work. We're blessed to have them. I see no one else. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Lucy. I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Manager, I don't know if I haven't seen it on our bill tracker, and I haven't heard much about it, but we were talking about this session there was a bill potentially for protections for snowplow drivers, including those for right-of-way. Has that been introduced? Has that been discussed? Can we get off, you and I talk offline about that?
We can talk offline. I don't recall seeing a bill, so I don't know if it's been introduced or not. They are behind on bills, so we'll find out. I'll talk with Commissioner Lucy, bring that information back to the board as a whole.
Okay. I see no one else wishing to speak. If there is no one else, we're going to go into closed session for labor agreement. Mr. Luparelli?
Mr. Chair, you need a motion to recess your meeting and go into a closed session for the purposes of discussing labor negotiations with Washoe County and/or Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District pursuant to 288-220.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Burke Bigler, second by Lucy, and what we are doing is we are going into a recess. We will go upstairs, and then we will open the doors and convene the meeting upstairs. Am I correct?
After your closed session,
After the
Mr.
closed
Chair,
session.
you will adjourn the public meeting from the caucus
Adjourn,
room
I beg
on
your
the
pardon.
second floor.
Okay, all right. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Affirm your votes. Thank you. We are in recess.